Okay. Hello, Mehdi.
Yes. Can you
How
hear
are
me?
you? Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm glad to
Great.
join you
All right.
again.
So yeah. So we'll start off. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm just a citizen. I'm just I've been supporting WikiLeaks and Julian Assange for several years now, since 2010. A little bit at the same time, approximately as Nozomi Hayase started. Around you could say almost exactly 8 years ago, around October or September 2010. Around the time Julian Assange was seriously beginning to be seriously persecuted,
Yes.
and there was the arrest warrants against him and so on. So I'm just a citizen and supporter and activist. And basically, I was like many, like yourself, like you said. I don't know if it was earlier or during the last vigil. You were infuriated by what was happening to Julian and WikiLeaks more broadly. So yeah, that's why I took some action since, and I started this non-profit. It's called Liberty Info in early 2011. Basically to defend and support WikiLeaks and Assange, mainly against the establishment propaganda. You could say almost worldwide establishment propaganda. Media propaganda, political propaganda, smear, and libel and spin, and they had it all. As you know full well. So basically, that's it. I'm just a citizen who's trying to be responsible.
Well, that's really what WikiLeaks is about, because what WikiLeaks is about is he's democratized information. I mean, he's put out WikiLeaks has put out this huge treasure trove of information about what government does. It's accessible to everyone. It's not something you've got to file a FOIA Act request, and that's going to take months, if not years, before the documents become available. And when they do become available, it's all redacted, and so you can't figure out
exactly
what the hell anything means. So that's what WikiLeaks has done. I mean, it's presented this huge amount of information, and all of what we talk about, was the Afghan material, the Iraqi material, Guantanamo Bay, Cablegate. I mean, this is an extraordinary treasure trove of information, and so it is up to citizens. It enables citizen journalism, citizen activism, because it enables us to be informed about everything that's going on, and that's something very different. Sort of, I was just talking about with Joe, from what happens in the mainstream media, which is where we have this selective leaking that serve little purpose other than as part of bureaucratic infighting. So it's not information in order to get generate an informed public. It's information in order to score a political point against somebody. And so that's WikiLeaks is the opposite model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they not only brought the truth about what was happening in very important issues like wars. Wars concern everybody because they have repercussions even generations later. But they also showed to which degree the media were absolutely corrupt and absolutely not objective. Of course, the magic word most journalists use is, we have a balanced coverage. When they say that, you can be sure that they are censoring lots of stuff and also introducing disinformation into what they are publishing, because for them, balanced means telling you exactly what their boss is expecting them to tell you, which is absolutely far, far, far away from the truth, because their bosses are generally either corporate or even sometimes military industrial corporations, like it's the case in France, like all those Dassault and Lagardère groups, which are defense contractors, massive defense contractors, and they own so many newspapers. As it wouldn't surprise anybody familiar with politics and propaganda and mass manipulation, right?
Yes, no, exactly right. And so that's why it's when we think of what do media publishers do, the media publishers write what their corporate masters want them to write. I mean, they, that's
as
what
simple
they do.
as that.
Yeah. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, I mean, I look at the Times of London, and every day there's something about Russian bots, Russian spies, Putin's about to launch World War III. And this is the Times. And you think, well, why is the Times writing this nonsense? Well, because Rupert Murdoch owns the Times, and that's the story Rupert Murdoch once put out.
Exactly.
And the same goes for other publications. I mean, the Guardian. I mean, what does the Guardian do?
Yeah.
Every day there is some story attacking Julian Assange. Every day. I mean, there's some nasty, malicious story about somebody who can't even answer back,
defend himself. Yeah,
and to whom they have been thoroughly ungrateful, because I mean, all the stories that they were able to publish on account of him
to sell,
and and the money that they were able to generate because of all the movies that they've done. It's such an act of staggering gratitude.
And even worse than that, because they sold rights to movies, and they published books in which they told, basically, they were supposed to tell the story of the partnership with WikiLeaks and so on. And most of those scripts and books, they are a lot about criticizing or character assassinating Assange.
Yes,
basically. So exactly as you said, not only they made a lot of money on WikiLeaks' back and Assange's back, but at the same time, they also character assassinated Assange.
Yes, and they're doing it on a daily basis. So every day there's they're doing the character assassination, and thus softening up the public opinion should something bad happen. Should suddenly he'd be thrown out of the Ecuador embassy. Or given his health, I mean, you'd have to wonder, at some point, maybe he'll have some health emergency, and
exactly.
he won't be able to get treatment in the embassy. He'll have to be taken to the hospital, and there he would be arrested. So what the Guardian is doing is essentially softening up the public for the moment when the British coppers seize him and haul him off to jail. And then the Guardian will say, well, he thoroughly deserved it.
It's like, it was coming his way and so on, and he almost begged for it, right?
Yeah,
that's what they try to sell to people, right? Yeah, so this is that's how they mold opinion, and they manipulate opinion. And WikiLeaks, through its publications, all these like big media outlets like the Guardian or the New York Times, which are supposed to be like left wing and like the good guys, and of course it's all bullshit. Yeah, the right wing, left wing narrative is just divide and conquer strategy being implemented, and they were absolutely exposed by WikiLeaks, and they were kind of they couldn't ignore WikiLeaks, because it was either we partner with WikiLeaks and we try to rip as many profits and benefits as we can, or we don't partner with them and we will look truly stupid. So they had to partner with WikiLeaks, but it's quid pro quo. It's like, this is going to piss off the government and the establishment. So we will publish some stuff from WikiLeaks, selected stuff, not everything, but in order to replease again our true masters, we are going to destroy this guy Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and anybody more or less related to them.
Yes,
it's exactly what we saw happening, and it's still happening right now. 8 years on, so it's like how dare this guy, this hacker, pretend to be a journalist and Nozomi said earlier, he innovated. WikiLeaks is truly a massive innovation. It's like cryptography, internet, and journalism, and also like the scientific paradigm of publishing the source material, right? So Assange combined all of this into this entity WikiLeaks, and that's how he he set new standards suddenly, you know. Suddenly, traditional journalism looks truly stupid, as it has been for a very long time, but not everyone was aware of it. And they just, it's like, how dare this guy do this with such integrity and without compromising anything. He didn't even negotiate with power. Well, you know, the New York Times has been sitting on the Pentagon Papers for months, negotiating with the U.S. government about, oh, okay, can we publish this? Oh, no, we cannot. Oh, can you give us something else instead? And WikiLeaks doesn't do that. Assange doesn't do that. They publish everything.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. To skip the role of the New York Times journalist as the gatekeeper. There's, you know, the New York Times tell us, you know, all the news that's fit to print, all the documents that you are entitled to see. Yeah. So that's right. But what's also interesting is now. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This just shows that these media outlets are there to protect the establishment. That's all. They absolutely don't care about the people. They only care about, you know, molding people's opinion in the right shape and direction. That's all.
Yes. And what's interesting is now you've got the sort of the official liberal line that holds up someone like Dan Ellsberg on a pedestal. Oh, well, of course, what he did, he published the Pentagon Papers. It's a great, wonderful thing. And everybody's now in favor of, oh, it was a landmark in journalism, publishing the Pentagon Papers. Well, anybody, the important thing is to take the risks of publishing information that's challenging now. This Unity for J. He, you know, he says, yeah, if you support me, what I did in 1971, you have to support Chelsea Manning. You have to support Assange because they are doing what I did. So don't just say, well, you know, Dan Ellsberg is a great man, but Julian Assange is a terrible person. No, you can't do that. Like, you know, if you really believe in transparency, then you have to support both.
Yeah, exactly. It's like because Daniel Ellsberg won at the courts, if I remember correctly, he won at the courts, right?
He won at the courts, but it was really a very close-run thing. It was only because a White House official, John Ehrlichman, had phoned the judge, and this was clearly, you know, inappropriate interference in a legal proceeding, and so the case was thrown out against him. But you know, it's touch and go. It might not have gone.
Okay, so it was.
He could have faced life in prison.
Okay, so he like won because of technicality more than because of or thanks to the true fairness of the justice system, right? Anyway, I'm not surprised, but yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a fantastic contradiction. Another one. How could they like praise Daniel Ellsberg and at the same time, try to destroy Julian Assange for 8 years and still counting, still going on? Same thing. Chelsea Manning, but even Chelsea Manning now has been officially recognized as well, maybe not a hero by the U.S. establishment, but it's like, okay, she's off the hook. But Assange is like he's like the guy they really want to go after and get. And I remember last time, I think on the last vigil, there was this question pending, which was asked to you, but you didn't have time to answer it. It was why did the U.S. government go after Julian Assange, but stop to go after Chelsea Manning? So can I ask it to you now, so you can?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Keep in mind that during the time when he was in solitary confinement and he was awaiting trial, there was a great deal of hostility towards, you know, Bradley Manning, as he then was. A lot of hostility. You know, very the media was very nasty towards him, and you know, whatever he was facing, you know, again, life in prison, not a whole thing for him. And it was, I think, the sex transition thing, that once he embarked on the gender transition process, I think there was a certain amount of sympathy that he was able to generate. And because it was, it seems like, well, if you go against him, you're going really against a transgender person. He got a much friendlier treatment in the media than he did have while he was still Bradley Manning. And so
right.
I think he's able. I think somebody said this earlier today. I can't remember. Was saying that, well, maybe that it's if you're playing identity politics, then like identity. Well, here's a transgender person, so so at least you can tick off one box. Maybe bad on everything else, but at least he's a good guy because he's transgender. So I think that was. I think that's one reason. I mean, but I think that one other important aspect now of Julian Assange is that right now he is held up by the sort of the liberal media, the liberal political establishment. He is held up to blame for the 2016 victory for Trump, and that is something that the liberal establishment is not going to forgive. And so he is now the victim of a huge fury. I mean, the liberal establishment is really pumping for blood, and they're not going to let this one go. So they are blaming him personally. So I mean, there are people still blaming Susan Sarandon because Susan Sarandon had not supported Hillary. But how much more are they going to blame Julian Assange? So he is unfortunate that he's got the right against him. They hated him from the beginning, but now he's got the liberal establishment against him, and they're much more powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yes. So his situation is really dire.
Oh, it is absolutely, and America, the U.S. is in so much denial, especially so-called Democrats or the people who are still assuming this label. I mean, they still cannot accept the fact that Hillary is crooked, like Donald said.
Of course.
The Donald being the horrible person that he is, and we saw evidence of it multiple times. But what he said was true. But many people in the U.S. still can't face with this fact that Hillary was crooked, that the DNC was absolutely corrupt to an unbelievable level. You just have to read their own emails, and they're looking for somebody else to hang in the public square.
And that's why that's why they've come up with this ludicrous conspiracy of Russia and WikiLeaks. So somehow Russia, in cahoots with WikiLeaks, stole the election from Hillary.
So ridiculous. I mean, who's the biggest empire right now? It's the US. It has been for 60 years now. It's not Russia. I mean, Russia probably tries to meddle, but I mean, there's very small players compared to the US. And history, you just have to see Latin America's history or the Middle Eastern countries' history. Who created Saudi Arabia? It's the US and the UK. They promoted a Wahhabist, an extremist tribe, which follows the Wahhabist extremist ideology, interpretation of Islam. And then they're surprised. There's so many ideological currents inspired by this very violent interpretation of Islam. But they never say that they were in the first place behind the creation of Wahhabism and Saudi Arabia. So it's completely denial, very partial. Well, they know the history, but the politicians know the history, but they never, the media and the politicians never say it to the.
Well, that's the part of the deceit that takes place. So the United States launches a war on terror following the 9/11 attacks. Who does it attack? So it attacks Iraq. Wow. Iraq has nothing to do with Al Qaeda. Who are allies? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia does have something to do with Al Qaeda. Then next on the chopping block, Libya. So what's Gaddafi got to do with Al Qaeda? I mean, again, anti-Al Qaeda. Then Syria. Now, according where are these Shia terrorists? I mean, where, what terrorist acts has Iran been responsible for?
Yeah.
So this is amazing kind of deceit that passes for sort of the public discourse in the United States.
Yeah, I mean that's why empires do. They lie the whole time. Everything coming from the mouth of a representative of the empire is a bunch of lies. I mean, if you look at the example of France, which used to be an empire, which isn't so much an empire, but tries to act like an empire and still carries the ideology. Its elites, political elites, still carry the ideology and have the reflexes of the empire. They're a little bit nostalgic of those times. Until recently, they recognized. When I say recently, just a month ago, or not even, they recognized that they did kidnap, torture, and kill Maurice Audin, which was an Algerian of European descent. Who was the descendant of settlers in Algeria during the occupation of Algeria, and he joined the resistance because he didn't like what he saw, and he saw how the empire was treating the Algerians, and they heard of his activities, and so they went at his home. They kidnapped him. They sent the paratroopers, right? Not just the police. They sent paratroopers. They took him to a torture center. They tortured him and killed him. And then they said, oh, that's what they have been saying for the last 60 years, right? Since 1957. So for the last 61 years. They have been saying, oh, no, actually, he escaped. He stole a jeep. He stole a car, a military car, and he escaped. And we don't know where he is, right? This was the official version. And until less than a month ago, they recognized that they killed him under torture by paratroopers, which means by the French government.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is what empires do. They lie all the bloody time. And it's very naive if you're a citizen of what is an empire now, or what used to be an empire. You should absolutely not listen to your government, or otherwise you're just being used to an unbelievable extreme.
And exactly, and that's why it is absolutely amazing how the public media buy into the idea that these former imperial powers, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, are somehow humanitarians. That when they say that we're going to intervene in country X because we care so much about the violations of human rights, or because we're so worried about democracy, that they actually mean it. That they're actually serious. That that this country that you just described, this murderous country, suddenly, well, we really, really are upset about violation of democracy. I mean, this human rights situation, it's really dire. I mean, so that, like you have Trump and Pompeo, and Vice President Pence threatening Venezuela. I mean, do they really think that the Latin Americans are really going to buy into the idea that the United States is worried terribly about the human rights situation in Venezuela?
They care about Venezuelans, right? Actually, they care about one thing in Venezuela, that's oil, because it's one of the largest, if not the largest reserve in the world of oil, right? That's what they care about.
Right. Yeah. But it's amazing how they can just pull this off, and somehow, you're going to, buy into this idea that this is that they really care about. I mean, this after all, there's just real powers. I mean, like you look from worrying about human rights in Syria. Now, France was the imperial power in Syria. I mean, this is, the Syrians celebrate the departure of the French.
Of course.
Does anyone really believe that anyone in Syria wants the French back? And that anyone's going to buy into the idea that the French want to come back, restore democracy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people are sometimes so naive, but when you see what people are taught, I mean, the education system is a very powerful way to brainwash people, and people in Western so-called democracy. I don't believe a single word of that, but what is called democracies, they don't recognize that they are very, very deeply brainwashed, and they may make fun of what used to be the Soviet Union and so on, but I don't think they are really doing much better in terms of freedom.
No, I think it's rather worse. I mean, I think that,
exactly.
I mean, if you just think of the is a joke. It's nothing more than a gas station pretending to be a country, according to John McCain, which is often parroted by others. And it's fiendishly evil, in which everything that happens due to Hungary, Macedonia, Spain, the United States, all because of the Russians. So, which is it? It's just a propaganda machine. Whatever. Soviet Union wasn't talking such nonsense.
Yeah, if you believe what is being said in Western newspapers, if you put them all together day after day, I mean, either Russia has an extraordinary, almost like superhuman and extraterrestrial level of power and high technology, like from a century or two in the future, or it's all a bunch of lies. Because how do you want Putin, who is just a human, even if you give him superpowers, how can he be behind so many plots and controlling so many things and being behind every single problem that happens in the West? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. So we've got the situation now of full-blown Stalinism, in which Russia is now everywhere. It's ubiquitous. Whatever's going on anywhere, it's somehow Russians are behind. Yeah, whatever's going on anywhere, it's the Russians. I mean, it's like you think of. I mean, probably at the height of the Stalinist sort of hysteria of the 1930s, there was nothing like this of such obsession about some foreign entity and their spies.
Yeah, that's why Western, and it is Western. People should remember that it is Western countries, Western governments who are after Assange. It's not Iran. It's not Russia. It's not Iraq. It's not Venezuela, right? It's not Cuba. It is the US. It is the UK. It is Australia, and it is so many other, most European countries, right? Who refused, by the way, Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, who refused him airspace and the landing of his plane because there was suspicion that Edward Snowden was hiding inside that plane.
That's right. Can you imagine that? I mean, seizing this is a head of state and just seizing his plane. I mean, it's just an extraordinary act of bullying, violation of national norms.
Yeah. So there was Italy, there was France, there was I think Spain. I don't know which other, and finally he could land his plane in Austria, if I remember correctly, only because the pilot said, okay, this is becoming like an emergency. We don't have fuel anymore in the plane. It's like, if there's no more fuel, it will crash, right? And that would be a big problem to manage, right?
Yes.
It's like, we suspected that Edward Snowden was in the plane. That's why it ran out of fuel. We didn't rent the right to land. So that's how he managed to land his plane, and they searched his plane when it landed.
That's
right. Whereas it is a diplomatic space, so there was so many violations of international law. But this is just to tell you how far these countries, which are self-proclaimed democracies, and most people living in these countries think they are living in democracies. This is the worst thing of it all,
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And then and you have the going on with Julian Assange. I mean, this is a man who hasn't broken any laws. He hasn't been charged with any crimes, and he can't step out of an embassy. I mean, he's being held as a prisoner, he's being denied basic rights just to be able to communicate with his friends and family. Health treatment, exercise, whatever. All is being denied, and he hasn't been charged with anything, just simply because of what he's published.
Yeah.
And this. They get away with this.
Yeah, well, they get away with this because they have the media, most of the media on their side. They are in permanent. They've been in violation of Julian Assange's rights as a human being, and also in violation of international law, because Julian Assange, I think has a diplomatic has been having a diplomatic passport since for a few years now. So he should absolutely have the right to leave the embassy, get in a car and go to the airport and go to wherever he wants to go. And the UK, which is supposed to be like the greatest democracy in the world, right? They absolutely don't want him. They say they will arrest him at the first chance, even with all of these protections, and even they threatened shortly after he got his asylum in the embassy. They threatened to storm the embassy, if you remember.
Yes, I did. They did. They very nearly did so. Yeah.
So this was it was almost a violation of international law, and just the fact that they threatened it. They threatened to do it, and they said, we don't care about, I think it's the Geneva Convention. We don't care about that international law. I mean, this tells you a lot about what these countries are truly in the end,
Right. That's exactly right. And, when you think of that, all that is required from the British authorities is a guarantee that that you won't extradite him to the United States. That's all, and he would be happily to walk out of the embassy. He'll serve 6 months for skipping bail. But the British just simply refuse to do this. So a very simple solution, a very simple, humane solution to this problem would be the British just simply say, we will not extradite him. That's just a guarantee. We will not extradite him to a third country, and they refuse to do it, and they allow this totally barbaric situation to go on.
Yeah, they don't want to give these guarantees. It's because they intend to extradite him if they get the request from their master, which is the U.S. government. This says a lot about all these countries, and it's a sad case. But hopefully, it will open the eyes of many people about what is really going on, and hopefully, people will gather around this case to defend Assange. Because if they get their hands on him, many dominoes will fall in the. Consequently, as a consequence, hopefully people will be aware of that, and at the end of the day, do people want to live in a pseudo, even if a little bit hypocritical democracy, or do they want to live in an outright fascist state? Which I think it will come to that.
Exactly. So that's a good question. You never really know. I mean, because of what Nozomi was saying about what she believed in free speech, but you kind of wonder. I mean, the practice of humans has never really been in favor of free speech. I mean, the eras of free speech have been very brief. Most of the time, there was no free speech. Most of the time, somebody who rather was controlling speech, and anyone who said things that rulers didn't like would find himself imprisoned or put to death. So it may be that it's not really in accord with human civilization to have free speech. So who knows? And that's what we're heading towards now with all the censorship of the internet, with what's going on with Twitter and Facebook, and the general the removal of all dissenting voices. Somehow it's like the rulers just don't like just too much free speech. So it's just something that we don't like dissenting voices. What we mean by free speech is speech that we agree with, and that's sadly the case, that with many people, what they mean by free speech is right to speak for those you agree with, but no right to speak for those you don't agree with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when at the end of the day, WikiLeaks is just publishing the truth. I mean, it's absolutely independent of any ideology or political current. So at the end of the day, do people want, no matter their political preferences, leanings, do they want to get the truth, or do they want to be more and more disconnected from reality and let themselves be played by the elite, who are the winners at the end of the day, right? And even them, they are the losers at the real end of the day, because they tend to destroy everything, like we have seen in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, George, I think I'll have to let you carry on.
I think Anne is supposed to join us. Can you see her? Or I can't see Anne.
No, but I think she must be ready. I just got a message in the chat saying that she's here. So I think she'll be on shortly.
Okay.
Oh, no, apparently she disappeared. So
that's, I can see that.
Okay. So okay, we can carry on.
Yes.
So actually, you're writing a book, right?
I was talking to Joe about my book about the wars in Yugoslavia, Western interventions in Yugoslavia. It was a kind of the paradigm for all the subsequent Western interventions.
Excellent.
The interventions in Iraq, intervention in Libya and Syria. It was all really, it was the kind of the various themes, motifs of we're building democracy. We're doing it because we're so worried about the humanitarian situation and the rights of minorities and so on. It was all these things, these motifs were tried out in Yugoslavia. If you think of Iraq, I mean, most people talk about Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction, and that was one theme. But there was another theme, which both Blair and Bush, which was democracy. We were going to bring in democracy to Iraq. So there was always that theme to it.
Yeah.
We're doing this for the Iraqi people. We really, really like the Iraqi people. It's just the same way, we care so much about the Iranian people.
Right.
We stand shoulder to shoulder with them. And so this themes, which were kind of this, the humanitarian intervention, is kind of what I was talking about. It's like, because that kind of provided the new kind of rationale for NATO and and U.S. imperialism. Well, we're not doing it for ourselves. We're just doing it for others. When we intervene in Iran, we're not doing it for ourselves, but that's just because we care so deeply about the Iranian people.
Yeah.
So
people, unfortunately, a lot of people buy this lie. It just shows you how little critical thinking is taught in these countries. That's why it's intentional. They don't put critical thinking in the curricula of their own education systems, because they want people to be just like sheep and just to follow the herd. And if you see countries like for example Germany has after Nazism, it has done a lot of work on itself. Like how did we let ourselves get carried away so far into horror? They did this kind of work, and Germans, from my experience, right, they have a very good critical thinking sense. Whereas in countries, for example, nearby countries, neighboring countries like France, or it's the exact opposite, because there's never has this work taken place about how have we been carried away into this horror, because France, for example, has collaborated a lot with the Nazis, more than happily, the establishment. the government co-ops and the media and even public companies like Renault and SNCF and others. And but there's never been this debate that has taken place in France. That's why they tend to swallow lots of lies about interventionism in Africa. There's a lot of interventionism in Africa from France right now, and there's very little, if any, like protests. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what Assange says. He says his enemy is ignorance. And I think that's one of the motivations why he created WikiLeaks, is to educate people about the realities of the world, what's really going on, as compared to what people are being told from their elites, from their politicians or their media.
A minute, I need to get a charger because my battery's running very low.
Yeah, sure.
Just talk for about 60 seconds. I'll be back.
Yeah, okay. Take your time, no problem. So apparently Anne Garrison is here. So I think she will take my spot, and I will let her carry on with George. Anne is going to be added shortly to the panel, and then I will leave you guys. So I'll just say one word, to invite people. If you haven't joined the Unity for J movement, it's still time to do it. You just have to go on the website. It must be somewhere here in the description of the video. And to try to find something to do to help Assange get his freedom and his rights back, and more importantly, get access to healthcare that he needs badly, because he's been struggling with at least two illnesses. One is a shoulder pain, a very severe shoulder pain. And the other one is a tooth problem, a broken tooth, a tooth that was broken, I think 8 years ago when he was arrested. Yeah, when he was imprisoned, actually, in the first days. And these problems, these health issues are really serious, and he really needs to have access to healthcare. So these are very urgent problems, and if you can join the movement and help advance the cause, it would be absolutely great.